What's up, folks? I'm Dwayne, and this is Blackboard Gaming, where we teach you about all these great board games that are out there, waiting to be played by you and yours. I'm a simple man, don't wanna complication. Hey, everybody. Today, I'm bringing to you what I am calling a board game link-up, where I'm going to talk about 3 board games that share a common denominator, whether they share the same designer or they have the same board game publisher or the same illustrator. They could be connected together by similar themes or similar components in each game. These games are connected to each other in one way or the other. Now today, the 3 games that I'm going to talk about share the same designer, and that designer's name is Tomas Halick. At last year's Essence-Ville 2024, he released 3 games all at the same time, and I've had the pleasure of playing and experiencing all 3 of these games, and I am struggling with which of these games that I enjoyed the most. So, without wasting any time, let me go ahead and tell you about these 3 games. The first game I'm going to talk about is the game that's considered to have the lightest complexity according to Board Game Geek. I think they rated 3 out of 5, with 5 having the highest complexity. And that game is called Tea Garden. In Tea Garden, we are owners of tea gardens in old school China. And we are trying to expand our tea plantations in order to score the most points. So this game is going to last 5 rounds, and in each round you start with a deck of 11 cards, and these cards have strength levels and different symbols on them. And so you're going to be playing these cards next to your player board, and you have to pay attention to the strength, because that dictates how powerful of an action you want to take. And so one of the actions you're taking is you're buying cards from the display. Like, this is a deck building game. And so when you purchase a card, you have to make sure you match that strength level and also have the tea leaves required to purchase that card. Now, your tea leaves on your player board, there are 6 different baskets, which represents the different qualities of tea, with 6 being the highest, 1 being the lowest quality. And so let's say this card requires you to have a power level of 2, a strength level of 2 rather, and you have to spend 2 quality tea leaves. So you want to make sure you have those tea leaves in your baskets, and then you gain that card. Now there's also a teapot symbol, so you also want to make sure that you have that symbol visible on your topmost card. And then when you take the card, you don't place it in your discard pile like other deck building games. This card goes directly into your hand, so you're able to use it on your next turn in that round. Now, other actions that you're taking is you're placing pagodas out onto the game board. And pagodas, at the end of the round, you're going to harvest tea leaves from each of your pagodas. You're going to harvest 2 tea leaves from each one of those. And based on where they are in those regions, the quality of that region, that's the quality of tea leaves you're going to get. Also, you're going to be selling tea leaves to the different caravans that are coming by, and those give you bonuses and points throughout the game. Also, you're going to be fermenting tea leaves. So you have fresh tea leaves, which are green, and then the fermented ones are brown. Now, where that comes into play is at the end of the round, you're going to either lose quality or gain quality based on your tea leaves. So your fresh tea leaves are going to go down 1 in quality. Your fermented tea leaves are going to go up 1 in quality. And so the fermented tea leaves, you could pretty much substitute them in place of a fresh tea leaf cost. So you want to make sure you're keeping those tea leaves, gaining in quality. Now, also, if something requires you to specifically spend a fermented tea leaf, you can't substitute a fresh tea leaf. Now there are secondary actions that you're doing also, One is you're going to the tea university. You're trying to learn some stuff about this tea making process. And as you move your meeple around that rondelle, you're gaining bonuses. And if you complete a full rotation, then you end up getting some points at the end of the game. Another thing is you're moving your ship on the board in order to gain bonuses. Another thing you're doing is also grabbing these teacup tokens off of the board and you place them in front of you. You're trying to match up the symbols in order to gain points. And like I said, there's some free actions where you're just moving up the emperor track, and if you get to the top, you score points at the end of the game. I mean, this game, for it to have the look of a cozy game, it has a lot of crunch, but it's a crunch that I enjoy. Now, so far, I've played this game twice with my wife, Alicia, and I played it two-handedly. Now, that's one thing I wish this game had is a solo mode, but despite that, I really enjoyed Tea Garden. The second game I want to talk about is this game right here, Galileo Galile. Now, full transparency, Tea Garden and the other game that I'm going to talk about were given to us for review. Galileo Galile, I played it with my friend, and I immediately went and picked it up. I really enjoyed this game. Now, this game is rated 3.01 on the Board Game Geek website, which is pretty much in the same complexity level as Tea Garden, but that 0.01 is well deserved because of the Spanish Inquisition in this game. So, in Galileo Galile, it's take place in the 16th century, 17th century. We are discovering planets. We've got telescopes and we're looking at the planets and discovering these planets and stuff. And how you're on your turn, which is pretty simple. How you take your turn is all written on the board. You're going to move your telescope 1 to 3 spaces. And then you're going to take that main action and then a secondary action. And then once you do that, then you're going to check the book of comments. You're going to deal with the Inquisition if you have to, and then check and see if you've obtained any of the objectives. And so some of the main actions that you're doing is you're gaining dice or you're exploring. That's one of the main ways to score points is to explore the sky. And so when you explore, you can either get a major object, which a planet or like a meteor shower or something, or you can explore up to 2 constellations. And how you do that is each of these, the objects and the constellations require a certain number of die. You're going to start the game with a yellow die, blue die, red die. And so you have to at least meet that pip value and have that specific die color. Now that's for the constellations, but for the major objects, they require like green, purple, and orange. So you're going to be blending some colors. So if you had a red and yellow die, now you have orange. And so like I said, you have to have that and you have to match those pip values. And when you explore those planets, the major objects, you take that card and you put it into your library. Constellations, you just take one of your tokens and put it out there and gain the points. Now, sometimes you're going to gain a visit from the Spanish Inquisition. Okay, so and I think that's the best part that I really like about this game is the Spanish. It's like a little mini game in a way. So when you gain a Spanish Inquisition, that token's going to go into the leftmost spot of the basement of your board, And so you want to try to move them over. You're trying to influence them like, hey, I'm not doing nothing I'm not supposed to be doing, but in their eyes, they're thinking you're doing some witchcraft stuff. So you want to make sure that you're moving the Inquisition and influencing them because the points can be detrimental at the end of the game. Now, before I get more into that, a couple other actions that you're doing is you're giving lectures at these different universities. And those lectures, you're moving your token up those boards, and those are going to give you multipliers depending on how much you've done something. So let's say one of the universities could be how many comments, you might get a multiplier. So if you put 5 comments out onto the board, also if you put 5 comments out on the board, and then you get that multiplier 3 times the number of comments, that's 15 points. Now that's another action I didn't mention, when you can also put comments out there onto the board, and those comments count as discounts to when you actually explore a constellation or a major body. You know, another thing is you could be moving your books through the library. Like say you're going to place those cards that you explored, those planets, you're going to place on your player board, and that's going to have a couple library tracks. And you want to move your book, like do some studying in order to move up them library tracks, and those give you bonuses too. But they also give you a visit from the Spanish Inquisition. And so, like I said, you want to build up your influence, because at the end of the game, based on the location of your Inquisition tokens, you're gonna either gain or lose points. Now, I just taught a 3-player game of this, and one of the ladies that I was playing with, she was trying to get one of those objectives, and so she explored 2 constellations and then got the objective for having most of her tokens off her board. The thing is, she got a lot of visits from the Spanish Inquisition, and she didn't realize that we were close to the end of the game. So at the end of the game, based on where her Inquisition was, she ended up losing a lot of points. So you really got to manage your Inquisition. Now, but this game, I really enjoyed it because it's just, pretty much what you're doing. It explains everything out on the board, and you're just taking that action. And once you take that main action and secondary action, you're going to move your secondary action down to the bottom and slide the other actions up. So everything's always changing, so you have to pay attention to that. And that is Galileo Galile. So the third game on this list, you probably already knew what that game was, and because I've been gushing about this over the few months ago, and I still really enjoyed this game. And that game is SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So now this game has a rating of 3.76 out of 5. So, which of course makes it it's heavier than the previous 2 that I've talked about. But this game has been racing up the top 100 games. I think it's like 49 right now, and I'm thinking it's going to go a little higher because this is a really great game. So in this game, you're doing just what it says. You are searching for alien life, and you are the resources. You're spending credits and to play cards out in order to give you actions. You're spending energy and credits to put satellites out into outer space, on Earth rather, and you're spending energy to move those satellites to the different planets. And then once you get those satellites to those planets, then you could spend resources in order to turn them to either satellites or a land rover. Now, what you're trying to do is discover alien life. And you're looking for these 3 different traces. There's I think it's the pink. I keep wanting to say red, but I said the pink traces. And you gain those by scanning the outer space and obtaining data and placing that data into your computer. You're gaining the blue traces by running. When you get enough data, then you're running that data, and then you gain the blue traces. And then there's the yellow trace. Like I say, you're landing on those planets, and you're gaining those traces. Now, when each of those colored traces are discovered, then we're going to discover some alien life. Now, as part of the setup, there are 5 aliens that come in the game. We're going to randomly take 2 of those and place them face down onto the play area, or the game area rather. And so when we discover those traces, then we reveal that alien, and that alien is going to give us different ways to play, different ways to score points, And like I said, it's a lot going on in this game. But this game does a great job of taking you by the hand and walking you through what you're doing, because it has a great rule book. All 3 of these games have wonderful rule books. I read through all of them to make sure I understand everything. And also the player aids, like each player gets one of these 2-page player aids that give you all the actions you can take, all the free actions. Also, you're gaining publicity. So whenever you gain publicity, you move up this track. And when you get a certain number of publicity points, you get to spend that publicity to give technology to place it out on your board, And this game, I'm gonna go more into it when I go into my final my final thoughts on these games. But yeah, this is a great game and deserves all the praise that it's been getting. So there you have it. 3 games that all share a common denominator, which is the same designer. And all these games were released at the same time, which deserves great praise because I have enjoyed all 3 of these games. And I have been struggling to, figure out which one that I enjoyed the most. Now, if I was, to say what other ways these games share similarities or link up rather, I would say definitely Galileo and SETI, where it comes with the theme. Like in Galileo, you are discovering these planets through this telescope. You're like, oh, you see these planets and everything. Whereas in SETI, you are actually going out to sending satellites out to the planets and landing on those planets to try to discover alien life.
Wonder who left this here.
Of course, Tea Garden has a totally different theme. But I think Tea Garden shares similarities with Galileo in a way because in Tea Garden, you're trying to manage that tea economy, your tea leaves, making sure you're moving around, fermenting them, making sure, managing the quality of tea that you have. And in Galileo, you're trying to manage that Spanish Inquisition, trying to manage that influence. So I think there's slight similarities there. But let's say, if I was to say, I still think my favorite out of these 3 will be SETI. And because, like I said, I enjoy a good puzzle. And I think all 3 of these games provide that for me. Like, Tea Garden is a cozy game with some crunch, trying to make the different ways you're trying to score points. And Galileo, I enjoyed that puzzle of trying to deal with the Spanish Inquisition. But in SETI, I think the puzzle there is just it's just more epic to me. Because like I said, the reveal of those alien races that come out, that changes everything around. But the resources are tight, really tight in SETI. And so if you do well, like I've taught this at 3-player and I've taught it at 4-player. And I mean, it was like I said, the teach takes your hand with those player aids and leads you by the hand and explains to you everything that you do in that game. And if you do well at that game, whether you win or lose, you do well, it is an epic feeling because, like I said, it's a lot of stuff you got to pay attention in SETI. So I would say SETI is still my favorite. Galileo Galile, I think that if I was to, introduce any of these games, Galileo Galile would be the one that I would gravitate to teach people first. Because like I said, everything's explained. Your rule set, you're moving your telescope, taking those actions, then you deal with these things as you go along. But, like I said, the challenge is dealing with that Spanish Inquisition. And art-wise, the art on those planets in Galileo, I really like that art, or the planets and the comets and all that, and the northern lights or the aurora, whatever you call it. But yeah, and the art in Tea Garden is just cozy, Now, I'm looking forward to doing several more types of these videos, and sometimes you'll see Alicia in them, but she's not with me this time because, one, she doesn't, the only game that she's had experience with is Tea Garden, and she's currently in New York having the time of her life. Her and some other history teachers are just having a tour of New York, and she's never been to New York before, and neither have I, so I'm looking forward to going there one day. But like I said, I really hope you enjoyed this type of video, this board game link up, and I'm looking forward to doing more of this. Like I said, we're going to link up 3 board games, whether it be by designer, publisher, theme, or whatever. And I hope you really enjoyed today's video. Now, if you like the contents of this video, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And I'm Dwayne. This has been Blackboard Gaming, and I will see you next time.